right? So listen to this. I just went in and voted, right? And they gave me, check the name and all that stuff and the address. I said, they didn't ask for ID. I said, do you not ask for ID? John Flew went, what? I said, do you not ask people for ID? He said, no, it's 1 in 4. It's 1 in 4. Then an older lad that was sitting beside him, the two of them were doing the same thing, right? He said to me, I know you anyway. I said, oh, do you? He said, yeah, I know your brother, right? I said, all right, fair enough, whatever. Went off, done the voting and that stuff. Then when I brought back the slip to put it into the box, the older fella who claimed he knew me and therefore there was no need to ask me for ID goes on to misidentify me and ask about someone who is not related to me at all. Right? So he's like, how is so-and-so? I said, who's that? He's like, is that not your brother? I said, no. He said, you look very like him. I said, right, yeah, whatever. I get that a lot kind of thing, right? So on you go. So he didn't need my identification because he thought he knew me, and then proceeded to show that he did not know me. He had mixed me up with someone else, right? So, be that as it may, right? We have voting, and regardless of what the outcome of this is, right? This is not, what I'm going to say is not predicated on a certain outcome, and therefore, if I get the desired outcome I would like, what I'm about to say is null and void and it shouldn't be looked at anyway. What I'm about to say is relevant regardless of what my preference is in terms of the outcome, right? Over the last few years, good amount of years now, we have had political parties, politicians, pushing for people who are brand new to this country to come in and vote in local elections, up to and including refugees, right, who don't have... this is not their home, right? That is yet to be decided, but they're allowed to vote in local elections, right? Now, in the general elections, the same thing applies, right? While refugees and that are not allowed to vote, new citizens and that are, right? People can have their names put onto lists and just walk in there and not have their identification verified, right? 1 in 4. What? That's useless. You might as well not ask anybody, right? So just say 1 in 4, right? Numerically, you have a 75% chance of fraudulent votes going in there and not being fraudulent voters voting and not being caught, right? Not being identified, not being asked for identification. So either ID them all, or tell people that we ID with a 75% likelihood that fraudulent voters won't get identified, right? But anyway, long list of candidates, and I've seen a few videos and people talking about the idea of, and there's a pragmatic value to it as well, right? A practical value to it, of voting for your preferences. Just say you've 3. Love these people, they're great, sound good, all that stuff. I want them in 1, 2, 3. And then using the rest of your votes to vote against those that you really, really don't want in. Right? There is I suppose, a tactical element to that. But I would look honestly and heavy-heartedly, to be honest, to be perfectly blunt about it, right, and honest. I don't believe that the bulk of the Irish voting population, right, have been given enough information to be able to make such tactical use and such tactical decisions around their voting, right? But then others would, and they might be able to do that, right? But that's not my main disagreement with that system. My main disagreement with that system is a psychological one. And what I mean by that is you've a vote coming up on the direction the country goes and on the direction that you're going to be pulled in, right? That's what you have a say on, which direction you might get pulled in, right? Essentially, you've no say over which direction that goes, really, but you have a say over how far or how wide this way or that way you'll get pulled. In theory anyway, right? So the psychological effect that voting the whole way down the ballot has, to me, right, is it conditions people to begin to be more and more satisfied with getting their third choice, or getting their fourth choice, or worse still, just not having their last choice get into power, right? That is the attitude of the loser, right? And what's the quote? I think it might be Conor McGregor. He might have just said it, and it's attributed to someone else. But losers watch winners, and winners do their own thing, right? I get the feeling of voting the whole way down of that sort of a thing, right? Where your eye is not necessarily on who you want in. It's your attention has been split into who you do not want in and who your second, third, and fourth choices are, right? That conditions, primes, and acculturates you to thinking in that way. So then if you get your third or fourth choice in, you still feel like it's a victory to you. That your vote led to a victory, led to something that you had prioritized and something that you wanted, even though it's the fourth choice that you have in. Or worse again, as I said, it's your last choice that didn't get in, therefore great stuff, right? That's a nonsense, right? I think that is a nonsense. I have serious issues with the voting system in Ireland because I think it's overly complicated. It heavily favours parties with the bigger reputation, right, or the bigger social knowing, right? The people that understand them and recognise them, they have a social recognition to them, some of these parties, and they will just get numbers beside their name because people feel like, well, I should make the best use of my vote, so I'll go down all the way down to 12 or 13 or whatever it is, right? So these parties that are more socially recognised or easily recognisable to people will get votes based on nothing more than people feeling like they should put numbers in all of the boxes, right? But fundamentally, as I said, what that does is it conditions you to not be aimed totally. It takes your total attention away from your first priority. And it allows you then a level of comfort to feel like, well, look, I got the fourth choice in, my number 4 got a seat, and the number 12 guy that I can't stand, he didn't get in, right? So I'm the winner today. Are you really, like? Are you really? And ultimately, where I think this voting system and pattern came around is wedded in the idea that in order to neutralize upstarts, or a country that has shown a history of being upstarts, right, kicking down the fences sort of a thing, right, you destroy them with too much choice, right? You sell them the idea of having total choice and such free roaming choice that you get to vote for and against loads and loads of people, right? So people think, this is great, I get a say on each of these people. And maybe you do, right? Maybe you do. But as I said, like, this technique favours the more easily recognisable parties, right? Because they're going to get votes just because people want to stick a number in beside them. And I think that idea of giving people too much choice, right, or selling them the idea that their choice is far more expansive and far more penetrating than it is if they were to just have a 1 and a 2, right, or a 1 even. I think it nearly mirrors what is going on in society at the moment. The philosophy or the worldview that you can be anything you want to be. You are not inhibited, or you're not structurally inframed, right, by genetics or your environment or your own innate abilities or whatever you want, right? There is no barrier around you and your personality and your abilities, even in terms of gender and in terms of race, all that sort of stuff, right? You can flip in between any of them. You can create who you want to be. Your choice in this world, with your life, with your mind, with your heart, is unlimited. right? And you can see the results of that. People don't know their arse from their elbows, like, and they don't know what to do with themselves because they've no bedrock, they've no foundation, they've no anchor into anything, right? And it's similar with the vote. What is your anchor going in there? Is your anchor or your North Star my first priority? And I'm only interested in who I want to get in there. And if that doesn't work, then I take the loss, right? Or is it anchored around voting against people? Or just giving votes because you feel like you should fill up the sheet, right? So those are my thoughts. And I suppose I'd throw in one more thing as well. I've seen a lot of comments referencing the idea that Sinn Fein are untested in government, therefore give them a chance. I don't know what to say to someone like that. Like, have you not watched their actions? Like Mary Lou McDonald, in terms of some of the most pivotal votes in this country, just didn't show up. Just didn't bother, right? Didn't bother. Didn't want, tactically as well, didn't want her name to be sullied by voting for or against some of these massive, massive decisions that have been made in the Dáil, right? So she didn't bother. She didn't lead. She was not pure enough in her principles to bolt her name to something. So she'll just go whatever way the wind blows, right? And it can go one or two ways. So if Sinn Fein get in, get some sort of a majority, right? And we enter into a phase of Keir Starmer form tyranny in Ireland. I think there's certainly a case to be made for that. One of them is the hate speech stuff, where Sinn Féin actually wanted to expand it even further to include immigrants as a protected class in terms of hate speech. So you can't criticise them anymore. That's Sinn Féin were on board with that. Sinn Féin pioneered that even, right? They wanted to go above and beyond what the other parties were doing with it. The other one is the referendum, the family referendum, where Sinn Féin, Mary Lou McDonald said, if Ireland does not vote according to what she thinks the way they should vote, she would run the referendum again. So she's no interest in what you actually have to say, right? She don't care about your votes if they're not going towards her or her party, right? So those are worrying signs, very, very worrying signs. Sinn Féin have also been selling Antifa paraphernalia previously on their own website, right? It's since been taken down, but they've been doing it. They've been making money off it, right? We can see these Antifa. I think was there a group of them in Finglas going around, I don't know, canvassing for people before profit, right? And Sinn Féin, I think, have come out and said, look, vote Sinn Féin and send the rest of your votes to people before profit. Why would you be coming out telling people this, right? And it's always vote left, transfer left. However, yeah, look, I'll finish on this part. Sinn Féin, I think, have the potential to wield a horrible, horrible iron fist in this country. I think they will bankrupt the economy because we'll just make everything free and we'll just make everything and where's the funding coming from? Either you put Ireland into even greater debt, or you extract that wealth from people that work in this country and cripple them even more so, right? Even more so. Because they all try and outdo each other. We want 10,000 houses. We'll do 30,000 houses. We're in the process of putting together a package of 50,000 houses, right? All this sort of stuff. Who's going to pay for that? How many block layers are in this country? 50,000 houses. We could go away with yourselves. Do you know what I mean? So then the answer to that will be Germany. We will import a load of Africans to do the job. And then Helen McEntee with the stupidest comment of all time, right? Unbelievable, outdoing herself continuously. We need to bring in immigrants into this country to build the houses for the immigrants that are already here. Right. And where will these immigrant builders live while they're building houses for the immigrants that are already here that need to be built? Right? This is what you're dealing with. So, if Sinn Féin get in, I do believe that we could see some horrible, horrible decisions being made. Unless they are held to account by So Fianna Fáil have said they won't go into party with him. Fine Gael's hands are kind of tied there as well. Will they, won't they? I'm sure they would. I'm sure they would, right? I don't see them being ideologically conflicted enough. Any of the three of them, or the Green parties, any of the rest of the parties in there. I don't see them being ideologically different enough to not go into power together, right? But what that would show is everyone, what a lot of people have is the belief that these are all the same anyway, right? It's just, the only difference is not the destination, but in the speed in which you get there. That is the only difference between these people, right? It's, don't go too quick. Slow, slow, slow. Fabian socialism, right? The totalitarian tiptoe kind of a thing, right? Or we just rush through it and plough through everyone like Keir Starmer is doing in England, right? I think Sinn Fein are more bullish in that way. And I think that they will go that way. But if they're held in check, if they decide to see which way the wind is blown, and there's a good amount of independents that are voted in, that aren't already like Michael Lowry kind of independents, right? They're bought and paid for already. They vote the same way as the parties they left years ago, that sort of thing, right? So, if they're held to account by a good consolidation of independents, Sinn Féin might decide then to play into the nationalist sort of Republican kind of stream that runs in all Irish people's minds, right? That has been triggered the other day by Micheál Martin when he came out saying, well, look, it was the trouble in the North wasn't necessarily both sides, it was mainly the Republicans and the Provisional IRA. I think he works together with Mary Lou McDonald. I think they all work together, right? I don't see any difference between them. I think their goals, their stated goals as well, and their goals in action and in inaction tell you that they all see things similarly, right? Again, I think the only difference is the speed in which they get there. So he's throwing her a bone here by throwing that out and sacrificing maybe himself and his party for the sake of Sinn Féin getting power and getting votes, right? Because I think they're all part of the same brotherhood and sisterhood. They all do the same things, right? So if the independents hold Sinn Féin in check, Sinn Féin might begin to don the nationalist kind of rhetoric and stuff, right? And even if they do, and they go gung-ho about it, and they get everything in this country that people might like, they still cannot be trusted, right? They still cannot be trusted. But overall, I think we will probably get a few people into the Dáil here, and just let the fireworks happen then, right? Because I think what Ireland has been suffering from for many centuries now is an unavailability of information. With information and education has been withheld from the Irish people for centuries, and we're worse off for it, right? We're kind of semi-thick in terms of these things. We're easily manipulated and conned, right? Because we stopped thinking. We are the dog that gave up on trying to escape because what's the point, right? Learned helplessness. Just flop on the floor and give up on yourself. After centuries of being deprived of these things, we stopped seeking them, right? We stopped seeking them. So if you get people in the Dáil now that are starting to introduce topics and a passion, right? A passion and an energy and a heart into conversations that people aren't used to, that's a positive, right? And either way, you need to just get rid of all these parties as well. They need to go. They need to go, all of them. Like, and the fact that they don't fall on their sword when they just should. Any honourable person that goes, you know what, I'm out of my depth here, I can't do this, I'm not good. People have died under my watch and I've enough. They're not going anywhere, right? They're not going anywhere. And even if you do get a solid swing towards sense from this election, they'll try and fold up the economy, right? They'll try and do something, right? You see it with Brexit. They voted to get out of Europe. Europe just piled on the pressure and nearly bankrupted them, right? And just drew it out so long that it put people off even the idea, right? So I think you'll see something similar here. But here we are, and we play the hands we're dealt at each given stage of this battle, right? And then we continue on, right? So we get this over and done with now, because a lot of people might be clinging their total hope to this. Don't, because the disappointment will kill you if you do that. Don't ever attach all of your hopes to one thing, right? You need to think contingency. Like, you need to think, if that doesn't happen, then we do that, we go there, we talk about that, whatever, right? Because if you invest your whole heart into something that you have absolutely no control over, you'll be devastated, right? So don't burn yourself out, don't blow yourself apart too much. And hopefully we get a couple of people in and see what happens then. It doesn't mean you take the foot off the gas. It's just a case of this is the next stage of where we're at. We make it the best decision we can at the time for this, and then we move on a little bit and we see what happens. Because what we're dealing with is a war for the average person, right? That's what we're at. That's what democracy is. Whoever can control the majority of the people controls the whole lot, right? And that's what we're at. That's where we're at. And we're also dealing with a government that are hands in pockets with RTE, right? The main media broadcasters of this country, right? Who give them just favourable presentations, right? And even when they're asking hard questions, there's 15 other questions that are far more salient to be asking that they don't, right? So even if it looks like they're sticking it to them a bit, they're not. They're highlighting this little minor detail to keep your attention away from these 15 other things that are of serious concern, right? So that's what you're up against, right? We are up against a near total completed monolith, a total state. It was almost there, and then people start to question and things, right? So that's where we're at. We're at the beginning of this, of just going, wait, hang on a second. Push back, right? Little by little. And eventually the dam bursts, right? So have a good day, enjoy your day, and what can I say? Didn't get asked for ID, whatever.